the first thing is that you must continue to be authentic and transparent. Once you build that relationship and earn trust, you need to be able to keep it, right? So authenticity and transparency are key to making that happen.
Hi, I'm Neil Perkin, the host of Think with Google Firestarters. And Firestarters, if you don't know by now, is a series of insightful conversations with the interested and interesting of the advertising, marketing, innovation, and digital commerce communities. And today, I'm lucky enough to be speaking with Claire Hennah, who's Beauty and Wellbeing Chief Customer and Digital Commerce Officer at Unilever. So Claire, welcome to Firestarters. Great to have you. Can I ask, what's your provocation for the Firestarters audience, please?
Well, thank you, Neil, for having me. Delighted to be with you. So I'm actually going to start firmly rooted in our consumer, right? The most important reason we certainly get out of bed in the morning, that consumer feedback plays an invaluable role in driving brand loyalty and community building for brands. And I really see that coming out and manifesting in two key areas. So it's really vital to show up where your consumers are, which increasingly is in digital channels from social to gaming platforms. Ratings and reviews really become your immediate sense and your heartbeat of what consumers think about your brands. And it's that barometer that keeps you close to how consumers and shoppers really feel about your brand and product. We also know the importance of influencers and increasingly, I would say, the creator economy. And I would really probably say that we're doing a lot of work at the moment, really building those relationships with key industry experts from dermatologists and stylists who have knowledge and authority in the beauty space. So we're constantly investing in those key relationships. And equally, there are more and more women that we know that are participating. I touched on it when I started in gaming. So, for example, we really need to make sure that we're in the platforms where our consumers are, as young as they are or as old as they are, or anything in between. We don't really want to say young or old, but we really want to be able to appeal to our key consumers wherever they are and whenever they are. And I think the second area is really about how brands are really meeting the real needs of consumers today. And we're doing that particularly through hero products that deliver and are backed by science. And science is the really important thing that we need to be communicating to our consumers. So within Beauty and Wellbeing, we really think about three key principles to achieve this. Are that our brands are really clear about purpose, we're really clear about the science in our products, and we're really thinking about the step up in desirability, which I'll go into hopefully a little bit more in the conversation that we have today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claire. There's so much to dive into there. So I'm going to start with that, the idea about showing up where your customers are, if I may. And the use of gaming is a really interesting example, I think, because some brands, I think, have done some excellent things within the gaming environment, but it can be quite tricky to sort of engage in ways that are meaningful for consumers or customers in that environment. So any sort of tips really for brands that are looking to move into environments like gaming or even other environments which are perhaps more socially driven and entertainment driven, how you can sort of fit in, do it in ways which are authentic and meaningful? Any sort of tips on that?
Well, I'll play back actually what you just said, Neil, because I think the first thing is that you must continue to be authentic and transparent. Once you build that relationship and earn trust, you need to be able to keep it, right? So authenticity and transparency are key to making that happen. I think the second is around innovation. Certainly we're nothing without our science-backed products. At the end of the day, the product efficacy and science is there, neither is the community. Your question around how do you meet consumers in a relevant and meaningful way, I think this isn't just about where your consumer is today, but equally it's where they are tomorrow. So from a digital perspective, absolutely right. I think it's important to build that presence, but it can be tricky. And I think you just have to go back to those principles around authenticity. So let me maybe use the example of Dove. So Dove, we partner with gaming developers like the Unreal Engine to create games that are much more representative of women, because we know that on average that 10-year-olds, for example, we've done a piece of work that they're actually finding a big proportion of them, half of the young girls that we've actually asked, 50% of them are saying that they're finding in gaming that the women or the characters that they're playing with are not representative of who they are. And because we obviously want to have a connection and a meaningful connection, we've worked with this particular partner to make sure that we're really co-creating with women in games a piece of inclusive work in gaming, so they can see a likeness to themselves. And Dove always want to make sure that we're representing young people and making the most and the biggest impact that we can. So what we did is actually launch something called the Real Virtual Beauty in 2022, which has been a series of actions supported by partners across the games industry to help really equip the next generation of gamers and young creators with the tools to help build self-esteem and body confidence. So you'll start to see in games moving forward a much more representative nature of women in this particular case, really powered by this research, but doing it in an authentic and meaningful way that really taps into the psyche of consumers.
That's fascinating. And I'd also like to ask a bit about the ratings and reviews as well, and that kind of customer feedback. And you mentioned in your provocation about how customer feedback is important alongside community building. So just if you can maybe give me some examples of community building with brands and with Unilever brands, how that idea of using feedback and continuous feedback to improve products or to actually take some of that feedback and use that insight. So have you got any examples of doing that?
Yeah, so maybe two. So for example, we have Tresemme, which is one of our brands. We've launched a new ultra fine hairspray. So some people actually don't like hairspray smell. I personally like it. But we've relaunched one particular variant of our hairsprays just this month in the US market with a new fragrance that was crafted by our research and development teams with high-end perfumeries at a fragrance house. And we think it smells super premium, but fragrances are very individualistic, right? You can take away some of it, but the one that we've designed is creamy, textured floral, and it includes mandarin, blackcurrant, vanilla, amber musk. So it really is addressing some of the feedback that we've had on some of our other hairspray variants. So we're really trying to address quite an acute need that some people have, but we hope that that really inspires people to think and smell differently, particularly if they're using hairspray to fix a particular hairstyle. I think the second one is Vaseline jelly stick. So in part, people are wanting to do something less messy and on the go and a different texture than Vaseline jelly, which you might know and love. And we're seeing a lot of love, particularly for Vaseline, with the slugging trend that's still going very, very strong. But people wanted a format that was much easier for them to be able to use on the go. So we've used that feedback coming from real consumers and created a new variant. So those are just two examples. I mean, I've got a wonderful example about one of our Nutrafol brands, but maybe we'll get into some other examples around that community side and I can bring that in then. But there's just two variants listening on consumer feedback that we've just released into market.
I mean, I think what was interesting there, you mentioned about, riding off the back of trends, you see something happening, you're able to respond very quickly to it. One of the questions I had about that was, how do you recognize which trends to respond to and which ones not to? The difference, I guess, between something which is a fad, here today, gone tomorrow, and something which is really worth building on.
Yeah, look, I think you can never always get it right all the time, right? So you have to accept that there is trends that come and go, and that's okay. But I think you need to go back to some of the things I discussed earlier around the authenticity of your brand. Sometimes a brand can't stretch to certain places, or it's not right for them because it's not in the ethos of the brand, and consumers are really savvy and they'll see through that. So I really think for us is there's a natural gut instinct of, as a brand owner, knowing what you can and can't go into when it comes to trends. I think also there's a test and pivot model. I think that's the beauty of online. It allows people to, as a really quick entry route to market, you can gain that consumer feedback really quickly. And if people don't stick, then, that's okay. You haven't spent millions and millions of pounds bringing a product to market and sit on shelf, right? So I think it's also been adaptive and, bringing in some of those agile principles. I think the more macro trends that, certainly I see in beauty and wellbeing that are here to stay, I would say transparency is definitely one of them. It's an increasingly complex world. And I think we as consumers are taking stock, calming down, clearing away unnecessary things in our life. So I think consumers will tend to choose hero products that have powerful ingredients. So that would be one. Specifically on inclusive beauty, I think this is a more trend. Young generations are really looking for those solutions that are seeking freedom and self-expression. And with AI, we'll be able to do this even more. And I think with that kind of support of AI and digital technology, we'll be able to really gather deeper understanding of beauty endpoints like dandruff, acne, overall health, and wider well-being to help make better products. And well-being. I think this is a major trend. I work in a company that's beauty and well-being. And I think you either see a beauty company or a well-being company, and you rarely see both. And I think what we're seeing a major trend in that overlap of categories. Once there was a separate role for vitamins, minerals and supplements and one for beauty and personal care. And people are no longer thinking about health as an absence of absence of disease. Instead, is health as a lifestyle pursuit. But I see those are probably the three macro trends that I would talk about within the beauty industry that, that we would really get behind more collectively across our platform of brands.
That's absolutely fascinating. I think I'd like to just build on that, actually, just with a question related to trends for digital commerce in particular. And there's so much happening here at the moment. And so, for example, quick commerce, so-called Q-commerce, and social commerce, new channels opening up all the time. And I know you've been very active in both of those. So tell me a bit more about how you're approaching those and how you see the opportunity in those areas.
We're pretty fortunate that we're able to be an early mover and have an early mover advantage. So if I think about quick commerce, our ice cream business has really led the way because it was spontaneity of the product. People were watching a movie and then they wanted ice cream, or you were ordering a pizza and you wanted dessert. And really early on, a team internally were able to crack that. They were very focused internally to then scale that to other markets. And so we've seen that replication of quick commerce. And we're also then seeing the huge change happening there and a lot of consolidation happening. So whereas you can see in different markets and maturity, India at the moment is having a real moment with quick commerce as a lot of VC enters the country, whereas Europe have had that moment, and now we're seeing a lot of consolidation and stores opening and people in slightly different mindsets. So we're able to really capture those learnings across the globe, build the capabilities and scale the capabilities. Social commerce would be another area where we're taking huge learnings from China, whether that is live streaming and how do you build the capabilities, right through to how do you work with a partner like Douyin, which is TikTok to most of us in the Western world. And we're really experimenting and learning from what we're seeing in China. And it also challenges, that particular business model challenges most organizations to work quite differently. You have to work very closely in marketing, in sales, in supply chain, content creation, brand marketing. It really is an industry in itself. I was only earlier looking at a live streaming factory in Indonesia where you can see influencer after influencer kind of literally lining up next to one another and doing live streaming. Our beauty advisors in Indonesia are also live streaming. So it becomes not just a physical relationship that you have with the likes of you and I in store, but then you take that consumer details, you clientele, and you can sell via online. And for these beauty advisors, we've been giving them the skills and the training with a partner like TikTok to be able for them to have a completely different skill set and new revenue stream as well. So I think in areas like this, it's not just purely thinking about online, it's also thinking about this channelless commerce that you've got, and really trying to fuel a truly omni experience, not really caring where the sale happens. Ultimately, it's about our consumers and the way that we can reach them anytime, anywhere.
And so if I can come back to the idea of community building, which we talked about a bit at the beginning as well, and this whole idea of actually building communities around brands, do you think that's relevant for all brands, or is it actually just really something which is relevant for just a few selected brands?
I think all brands can have some form of connection with the consumer, Neil. It's just whether or not it ends up transpiring into a community, right? So I think it's all about, for me, around the consumer need, and whether or not your brand ultimately is playing into a need where a community feel it's untapped and it's an opportunity for them to connect to one another. I would use the example of our brand Nutrafol. It's a brand that's in the super premium science-backed approach to whole body wellness, but essentially clinically effective hair products. So hair health is a top consumer trend with men and women. It affects about 114 million American consumers. I'm talking particularly around hair fall. And Nutrafol's taken a completely unique and differentiated approach to building loyalty with its consumers. And as I said, it's clinically backed. It's got a number of dedicated specialists that have really helped us find a solution that targets multiple root cause of hair thinning. It's focused on empathy and removing the stigmas that's associated with hair thinning. And I think for a lot of people, that's a real key concern. There's still a lot of stigma. But by engaging with the consumer and that strong network of medical professionals, they continue to buy the product because it works. Looking at it's an immersive, personalized experience. So there's a lot to it that helps nurture that community and connect the community as they go on that experience with the brand. So it's multifaceted, really.
Brilliant. It's a really interesting example of that. And I'd also just like to ask a bit more about you mentioned about purpose as well. And of course, Unilever are really well known for sustainability, purpose-driven brands, and so on. So how important is that when you're looking to build a community, to have a sort of clear purpose behind the brand and the community? So tell me a bit more about that.
We have a single-minded focus on performance, and purpose is just one component of that. So as long as there's a good brand proposition that's driven by innovation, channel availability, price, we see that purpose is not an add-on, right? Brands that offer value and values are brands with purpose. So value is about offering the right value equation, superior products at the right price, through the right channels. Value is a point of view that matters to people, and they care that that brands are making change. But purpose isn't a substitute for a good value proposition. And we know that about 60% of Unilever's turnover comes from brands that consumers recognize as making a positive contribution to society and planet. And these brands are often growing faster. So for us, it's not as separate. It has to be backed in product superiority. So it's together, it's not an add-on.
And you talked earlier also about desirability is the kind of third strand, I think, sort of purpose, science, and desirability. So what did you mean about sort of building desirability? What does that actually mean for Unilever?
Look, I think desire is all about making beauty brands stay relevant and timeless, right? And that's from the packaging that you see right through to the product superiority, and it's making it distinctive enough and making it feel the je ne sais quoi of beauty, or beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think something is a desire that you can feel, you can touch, and it's quite unique to, I'd liken it to, I used to work in luxury retail, right? But you can't quite put your finger on it, but it's the desire that you're getting something back for investing in that brand. And that does not always mean that it's the most expensive product on the floor, or that something that you buy online, but it's It's that extra special something that makes you as a consumer feeling that you've got that little bit of extra, and makes the brand feel elevated.
We're running short on time, unfortunately, but I do have one last question, which really just relates to all of the different possibility which is really open to you as a organization, from channels and the new channels that you're developing, from innovation possibilities, from customer feedback. You know, you've got so many things that you could be doing. How do you decide what you need to focus on, where the priority should be, what brands you should focus on, what channels you should develop? You know, what's the kind of prioritization process for deciding all of that?
It comes back to our pillars of purpose, science, and desire. We've got a clear geography focus that we have. India, for example, is one of our key countries to grow in, but that is not at the expense of other areas of the world, right? So we're very clear internally around our 3 pillars, and so again, it's been really clear around the brand's role within a market, the channels that we'll play in. We know within beauty and wellbeing, when you look at the industry, most of the channel growth will come online or through beauty specialists. That could be pharmacy, that could be modern health and beauty stores. So we're also really clear around within those channels, what does it take to really win? You know, how will our brands shape and premiumize to be able to really play in the spaces where people are? So you can still make brands that have huge heritage very, very relevant by going back to being really clear about your purpose, skin healing in this particular case, really then talking about science superiority, so glutathione, and then really creating that desire where you just want really amazing skin in a hot and humid climate, and you don't want it to feel sticky and all of those other attributes that maybe we would associate with that type of climate. So you need to know that, and it's deeply rooted in consumer insight, and I think with that, then you're able to really build your strategy into action.
Brilliant. It's been super fascinating, Claire. Really interesting to talk to you today. And so thank you so much for taking the time. And for everybody that is watching, don't forget to subscribe and, of course, to share the episode if you enjoyed it. But my thanks go to Claire Hennah for being such a fantastic guest on Google Firestarters. So thank you very much, Claire.